The good drivers know they have to adapt and change and maybe do some things, take some freight, go to parts of the country they otherwise wouldn't want to go to. But that's what you need to do in a down economy. The worst thing you can do is turn down freight and work during a freight recession.
Welcome to Drive, the podcast for truck drivers who are looking to enhance their lives both on and off the road, and for carriers who are looking for that perfect fit. I'm Chelsea Faulkner, and we're here to bring you conversations that will help to keep you moving forward in every area of your life. Whether you're a seasoned trucker or just starting off in the industry, this is a show for you. I'm Chelsea Faulkner, and today we're chatting with Tim Norlin, the Vice President of Roehl Transport. Tim's been in the industry since the 90s, and he brings in his own brilliant amount of insight into the trucking world and what's happening with today's freight recession, as well as the ways that we can really start to improve upon those relationships that are happening between what's happening in the office and what's happening behind the driver's seat. Tim, thanks so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate you taking the time out to share your genius with our audience and to let them know a little bit more about who you are and what you're about.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're going to make me go back a long way. I've been doing this for a long time. I've been in the recruiting space since the late 90s. Found a passion for it. Got into trucking right out of college. I have a degree in logistics management and was on the operations side for a number of years, and then got into freight sales, became a terminal manager for a large truckload carrier. And one of the things that we struggled with as a new terminal was growing our driver count. I pestered the person in charge of recruiting to get me more drivers. I mean, how hard can it be, right? You put a help wanted sign up, you place some ads in the newspaper, and drivers flock to you. Well, boy, did I learn real quick. In fact, I was challenged that the person said, well, if you think it's so easy, why don't you come work for me and find out? So I took the challenge and jumped into recruiting. That was back in, like I said, the late 90s, and I've never looked back. Love it. Love what I do. I have a passion for it. I like making a difference in people's lives. Drivers are looking for homes, and I want to help them find their homes. And been through it all. We've been through the good times. We've certainly been through the bad times. We've been going through a long one here just recently, but I haven't lost my passion for it. I look forward to coming to work every day, and that's something I tell my people. You're going to have good days and bad days, but every morning you should wake up looking forward to what you do every day.
Absolutely love that mantra because it's really true. And if you don't look forward to what you're doing every day, then you're not going to come in and make that difference because you're not going to bring that passion to work with you.
Exactly.
Super moving. And I also love the fact that when you dove into retention, they met you with that challenge of, if it looks so easy, why don't you come do it? Because It really does. Everybody thinks that retention has got to be one of these easy things and that recruiting has got to be one of these easy things. It's like, yeah, you just put that help wanted sign out there and everybody's going to show up. And then once you get them in there, you just treat them nice and it's good. And it's definitely not like that at all. It's a beast out there.
It absolutely is. Drivers have a lot of choices and drivers are being told a lot of things and given a lot of promises about how it's going to be, and whether there's truth in that depends on who you're dealing with and whether the driver does their homework. That's hard to compete with because there are some folks that will tell drivers what they think the driver wants to hear to get them on board because that's their job, to get them in the door. We're a little bit different at Roehl. Not only are we responsible to get them in the door, but we are responsible to keep them and make them happy.
Absolutely. And I feel like that's a game changer in the industry too, because I know, speaking of Roehl and their values as far as that goes, Handled Now is very much so the same way. And that's something that we've come up with, as the fact that you only give the promises that you can deliver on. And yet when you look across the industry as a whole, there's so many companies out there that will sell you whatever they can to get your butt in the seat. And that puts a bad taste in everybody's mouth as far as what recruiting looks like.
It absolutely does.
I love the fact that you guys are standing behind that value because, again, that's the game changer in the industry, especially moving into this next stage with this next generation of drivers.
Yes, it's very, very important. And that's one way we differentiate ourselves from the competition is we put it in writing. Every driver gets an offer letter, but we go one step further. We have what we call an integrity checklist, and it's a series of statements of fact about what the driver will be doing for us: home time, pay, equipment operated, where they're going to run, all of those things that sometimes get missed when a driver joins a company and says, oh, my recruiter promised me this, and that's not what I'm seeing. So we have that form. Recruiter goes through it with the driver before they come into orientation. Then the driver gets that form Once they're in orientation, they read through it and we say, hey, this is what you and your recruiter talked about. We want you to read through it. If you agree that you talked about it, go ahead and initial it. If you have questions, let's stop right now and answer those questions before you proceed. And, that's a game changer for us. We rely on that document. We have our drivers hold on to those documents because we put our money where our mouth is, and we want to make sure that we're meeting the expectations that we set.
For sure. And what a great way to give them that clarity, as well as giving you guys the accountability on your end to say, listen, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're about. And if for whatever reason something doesn't live up to standards, we're going to come back and we're going to revisit this and we're going to talk about it. That's amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It really works well.
Tim, I know whenever we spoke initially, you talked a lot about this bad part of the market that we're currently in, and you touched on it for a brief minute here a little bit ago. But you also had a lot of things that you were seeing as far as what this trucking recession looks like and what it's been over the last several years. The market has obviously been not in a great place. We've seen a lot of different things that we haven't seen in decades at this point. And yet you came into that conversation with me saying that you're seeing some hopeful signs. You're seeing some ideas that things could be going on the uptick. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. The big thing is we've seen rates stabilize. There was tremendous downward pressure on rates. There's two kinds of customers out there. There's the contractual customers that like to set contracts and know what their costs are going to be for the foreseeable future. There are also customers that are more transactional. They play the market. Hey, it's no different than futures. You can buy fuel for the future, hoping that the price is going to stay down. It might go up, but customers are no different than that. What we've seen is rates have stabilized, and we're actually beginning to see marginal rate increases on business, especially on the transactional side and on the contractual side. And that's a sign that capacity is beginning to tighten in certain areas as more and more players come out of the market. That is a hopeful sign. We've seen our miles per truck per week increase over the last number of weeks, and that's also a hopeful sign. It means we're doing better. We have better productivity from our drivers, which is really great to see.
Absolutely. And I know that you said that you've been in this industry since the 90s. So you've been here for a minute. You've seen some of these different cycles and the way they come in and out. How would you say that these early signs compare to those past cycles of downturn and recovery?
We saw this earlier too, and we thought, oh boy, this was in late 2024. We thought we were turning the corner a little bit, and then tariff talks got in the way, and it kind of set us back a little bit. But we're hopeful that this time around it's going to continue. It's been a tough one. This is the longest freight recession I've ever experienced. Usually they're maybe 18 months. The cycle is about 18 months, but we're going on pushing 3 years now. Yeah. With this. And the big challenge is folks that got into this industry during the COVID years when freight was booming and they could name their price and, they were buying equipment, and you look at the business starts for trucking and they just shot up. Those folks don't know what to do. They've never experienced anything like this. And, I heard someone refer to them as zombie carriers. They're dead. They just don't know they're dead yet. They're not paying their bills. They're just trying to generate revenue to put it off as long as possible. Unfortunately, that's happening with more frequency now. We got word yesterday of a couple more carriers. And when I say couple carriers, sizable, I mean 100 trucks plus. That's a pretty good sized carrier. The average carrier is about 3 to 4 trucks. But when you start seeing companies with hundreds of trucks going out of business, it's really starting to take a toll. We're really going to see, I think, capacity tighten here in the second half of this year, which is going to help those of us that mind our P's and Q's and watched our costs and set ourselves up for a rebound.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, Tim, there's a lot of people that are out in the space right now that have seen a lot of the negative and a lot of the recession and everything that's come with it. And the fact that this has been such a long cycle in the way that that goes. And there's still a lot of that negative talk. So to hear you come in with these hopeful signs and to hear you come in with the positive spin on it, that's inspiring, especially when we're seeing these carriers that do keep shuttering their doors. What message would you have for the drivers who are with those carriers that have been shuttering their doors, and these drivers that are just out there in the field right now that don't know from day to day whether or not they're going to still continue to have a job?
Yeah, that's tough. And, for those drivers, it can be very discouraging, especially if they've not been through this before. My word to them is there are other opportunities out there, but look before you leap. Make sure that the carrier you're going to is a stable carrier, has good, sound financials behind them. That's one thing that our recruiters really play off of. Rail's been in business since 1962. One of our biggest benefits to our employees is profit sharing. The Rail family is very generous and shares the profits with us. We have had profit sharing every year since the inception of profit sharing more than 40 years ago. So think about that. This
Yeah.
company has made money every year for more than 40 years. There's not too many trucking companies that can say that, but there are a lot of great companies out there that know how to manage their money and they're in it for the long haul. That's what the drivers need to look for. Don't jump to another carrier that's hanging on by a thread right now and just trying to pay their bills and hoping that things turn around here soon. Get with a carrier that has good, strong financials behind them.
For sure. And I think that messaging in and of itself is super important, especially with all of the drivers that we've seen their work history that bounced all over the place during the COVID pandemic because they were jumping from carrier to carrier because of all the sign-on bonuses that were out there. And I mean, fiscally, financially, it was a great idea for them in the moment. But now we're looking at all of their work history and everything that's happened there. And we're turning down drivers who would be excellent drivers if it wasn't for the fact that they were jumping from one to the next, chasing those sign-ons. The fact that you're addressing that bigger picture, look at the financials behind just what they're putting on that ad. Look at the financials behind what they're trying to be showboating in your face, and look to see what they've done for decades behind you. That's a huge message.
You hit on a good point. There was a lot of hopping when things were great. I mean, it was so easy for a driver to move. They could literally move from one carrier to the next in 24 hours and be in somebody else's truck and driving. And that's the industry that we built that problem. We made it so easy for drivers to move. But that's, unfortunately, that damages a driver from consideration for most of the carriers that really look at work history. We want to find someone who not only sticks with us through the good times, but works through the issues. You know, it's trucking. You're going to have issues regardless. It can be the best freight market in the world. We're going to get to a customer and their line goes down and we have a little bit of dwell time waiting to get loaded. So it's important that drivers, understand that and work with their carriers. And when we see somebody that hops quickly from one carrier to another, we pass over those candidates. And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of that right now. The candidate conversion rate of applicants to hires for us continues to go down simply because of our selection process, and work history is a big part of that. So I would encourage drivers, if you're out there, make moves, make them strategically, but don't make them rapidly. You need to show some stability in your work history if you really want to be considered by the better carriers out there that provide the benefits and the wages that you're looking for.
Absolutely. And to continue on this conversation regarding the driver experience, specifically within this volatile market, can you talk to me a little bit about the inconsistency as far as the miles, the freight flow, the job security goes overall, and how that's impacting driver retention across the market?
Oh, it's definitely having an impact. What we're seeing is these drivers that we're talking about now, when miles are down in a down market like we're seeing, miles are inconsistent. We've seen length of haul drop. We've seen miles per driver per week drop as a result of the freight recession. We manage the best we can. We go out and we search for freight that maybe we otherwise wouldn't haul to keep our drivers busy. But miles per week can fluctuate greatly. Part of that's on the carrier, but part of that can be on the driver too. You get used to doing something and all of a sudden the freight that you relied on isn't there. And now you're being asked to do something that's outside of the norm for you. Roll with it, do it. I'm telling you, the good drivers know they have to adapt and change and maybe do some things, take some freight, go to parts of the country they otherwise wouldn't want to go to. But that's what you need to do in a down economy. The worst thing you can do is turn down freight and work during a freight recession. Those are the drivers that carriers look at when things get tight. We want to make sure that the good drivers, the drivers that really bust their butts, have the freight to keep them busy. And good drivers that have been through this before know to hunker down and to get through it because there will be better days ahead. So you've seen that from a lot of carriers. We've seen a lot of candidates that were let go by their carriers, probably the largest percentage I've seen in a long time of drivers that were let go for one reason or another, and typically because of productivity issues. And those drivers are really going to struggle. until the freight comes roaring back and carriers get into that mindset of, hey, we need anybody right now in our trucks, they're going to struggle to find a job because, like I said, we are very selective right now on who we're bringing in. They have to have a real stellar work history for us to consider them.
I feel like that's, again, another one of those testaments to the messaging that came about during COVID, because we had this whole new generation of drivers who were seeing the dollar signs, rightfully so. It was a great time to be entering the market. But when they came into the market, they also realized the fact there was such a need for drivers that they got to make the rules on everything. So if they didn't want to do something, they could say, no, I'm not doing that. So now coming back and having that pivotal, we need you to be a little bit more flexible with things, because that's what's going to set you apart, is your ability to engage, your ability to be flexible, your ability to say, I am part of this team, not I am part of me, and to actually work to build that team out. So that's big in and of itself.
Absolutely, it is. That's part of our culture here at Roehl. We refer to drivers, everyone here at Roehl, as teammates. We're all on the same team. In fact, we call everyone Team Roehl, and there's no space. There's no space. It's all one word, Team Roehl. And our responsibility is to take care of our teammates. Just like on any team, you have players that have special assignments, and if they're having an off day, somebody steps in to help them and guide them. And that's just the way we operate here. A lot of folks that haven't been in that environment or have come from I got to watch out for number one, I got to watch out for myself. It's different to see people reaching out and helping them. And a lot of folks really appreciate that.
Absolutely. And I feel like that's the beginning of the change in the culture that we need at this point in time, is those companies that are willing to say, listen, this is not just an every man for themselves, whether you're the CEO or whether you're the person that's sweeping the floors at the end of the night in the truck shop. It is a teamwork environment. That's what everybody's doing. Everybody's coming together and everybody's coming to the table. That way, everybody knows that when they walk in the next day, they're still just as passionate as they were the day before when they walked in. That's amazing.
Yeah, it really is. It's a breath of fresh air. I haven't had my entire career here at Roehl. I've worked for a couple other carriers, and I've seen the other side too. But so refreshing to see that here, how everyone reaches in and helps each other. And what speaks volumes that we know we're doing it right is the number of drivers that have been with us for years and years and years, and their success. This year, we were so fortunate. We had our first 6 million mile accident-free driver. He has spent his entire career here at Roehl, and 6 million miles accident-free. Just amazing. If that wasn't enough, we just had our second 5 million mile driver. So 5 million miles accident-free. And that goes along with the hundreds of 4, 3, 2, and 1 million mile drivers that we have. And you think about a carrier Roehl, there's drivers out there that think of us as a starter company. That's not a starter company. Starter companies don't have numbers like that. Yes, we do train drivers, and we train a lot of drivers, but a lot of those drivers stay with us for their entire careers. And that's so refreshing to see. Tells me, from my experience, going way back to when I got into this industry, that this company knows what they're doing. They're doing it right.
Absolutely. And kudos to you guys on those achievements, and congratulations to the drivers. That is huge.
Absolutely huge.
Now, sticking on this conversation about the messaging and the internal communication, especially going back to those transactional companies, what do you feel like is being lost in the messaging as far as what's happening with the drivers versus the people who are in the office, as far as the messaging goes with those transactional companies? And how is it you feel like they could improve?
That's a tough one, because we do have to deal with transactional customers. And the biggest thing that we can do is educate them on, what they're getting when they're dealing with Roehl Transport and a Roehl Transport driver versus, another company that really lives in that transactional space. We try to build relationships with our customers. And, when you have a relationship like that, you're able to share everything that you're doing. And for some customers, it means the world. Other customers, it's all about the dollars and cents, right?
Yeah.
But safety is huge. You want your product to get from point A to point B safely and on time and intact, right? That's what they're paying carriers to do. Those transactional carriers, some of them that are lowballing the rest of us, how safe are they? What's their equipment look like? What are their safer scores? What are their driver requirements? Some customers don't look at that, and we try to educate them and let them know how much money they're actually saving. Even though our rates are a little bit higher, they've got peace of mind knowing that we're going to get their product from point A to point B. They're not going to be involved in an accident where their product is spilled all over the road and makes the nightly news. That's not good. So our sales team, those folks are out there sharing that message with customers. We share our successes with our customers. Our 6 million mile driver, our 5 million mile driver, we want to make sure that they see that and experience the rail difference when they're dealing with our drivers. Our drivers are very professional when they go in. We want them looking, neat and tidy and professional. Drivers are the face of rail transport. So when they go into a customer, we want to make sure that, that they're shining and really representing the company well.
Absolutely. I'm going to jump back for about 2 seconds because I can just see your face light up every time you start talking about the 6 million and the 5 million mile driver. Can we name drop those drivers and celebrate that for a minute? Is that allowed?
John Moeller is our 6 million mile driver, and Alan Matejka is our 5 million mile driver. We did big celebrations for them here. John, the entire office evacuated and lined our driveway. We knew when John was coming in, so we had hundreds of people actually lining the driveway when he pulled in the gate after he had hit his 6 million milestone. And we celebrated with him that afternoon. His family was there to greet him as well. It was fantastic. And then Ellen is a little bit less for the spotlight. It was a very low-key affair for him, but that's the way he wanted it. But we still celebrated with him. Huge milestones. You could probably count on both hands how many drivers in our industry have hit 5 or 6 million miles. I mean, you look at some of the big carriers out there, you don't hear about it very much.
No.
We did press releases. We put it out to the industry. I know some of the industry publications picked it up. We certainly splash it all over our website to let people know what those two drivers have accomplished. And, the cool thing is we thought both would retire when they hit those milestones, and they're still driving for us. So
that's amazing.
We're pushing John to go for 7 million miles and Alan to go for his 6.
Yeah, that is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. And I'm going to apologize for putting you on the spot there, but that's one of those things that needs to be celebrated and needs to be celebrated super loud. I'm sitting over here with goosebumps and wiping tears out of my eyes, so we're not going to judge on that. It's one of those things that when you start to hear drivers who are the backbone of our country, they're the ones that are keeping everything moving, and they're hitting those milestones, that is inspiring. It makes me want to get behind a wheel, even though that probably is not going to be a good idea. But it also makes me want to go and shake hands with those drivers and be like, listen, you are such an integral part of what's going on in America today and keeping things moving. Thank you for your dedication.
And those are the drivers we need to celebrate and put out there for the public to see. Unfortunately, the news is so sensationalized and they love to pick up truck driver did this or truck driver did that. And it's always negative. We need to overcome that and fight back by celebrating all the good that our industry does and our drivers do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Again, I apologize to put you on the spot, but that's amazing.
Yes.
So, Tim, what's it actually look like to treat drivers more so as human beings more than just headcounts? Because that's something that we see happening a lot in the industry. It's how soon can we get another warm body in this seat, which is definitely a headcount issue. It's definitely a numbers game. Mm-hmm. So bringing that empathy, bringing that compassion back, what do you feel like that looks like?
We're in the relationship building business. That's how I see recruiting. We're in relationship building. Driver reaches out to a recruiter. The recruiter has one chance to make a difference and make an impression on that driver. Use their name. Refer to them as their first name. We do a lot of call coaching here with our recruiters and some of our new folks. It takes a little bit longer, but when a driver calls in and wants to know about opportunities with rail, the first question out of our recruiter's mouth shouldn't be, where do you live? It should be, who am I speaking with today? Yes. Oh, hey, John, how are you? My name's Tim. What got you calling Roehl Transport? How can I assist you today? And then have those conversations. And as you're talking, make sure that you continue to refer to the driver in their name. There are so many carriers, big and small, that refer to drivers as a truck number or a driver code. I hate that. I've always hated that. And I've worked for a couple other big carriers. And whenever someone did that, I said, I don't deal in codes or numbers. I said, what's the driver's name? Trying to push people, gently push them. These are fellow human beings. Let's refer to them by their name rather than by their driver code or their truck number. It'd be like, if somebody called me and said, my code at Roehl, I'll just tell you right now, it's Norty. So if somebody called me and said, hey, Norty, I'd be like, who are you? What are you doing? Let's build an interpersonal relationship. And our recruiters do a great job of that. And they follow up with those drivers long after the hiring process is over. They stay in touch with the drivers. Hey, how are things going? We reach out, celebrate anniversaries with the company, celebrate milestones. Unfortunately, the recruiters that recruited our 6 million and our 5 million mile drivers don't work here anymore. They've long since retired, but we have had recruiters that reach out. Hey, congratulations, Joe, for receiving Driver of the Year. That's fantastic. I remember when I hired you 5 years ago as a brand new entry level driver. You're really doing great. Things of that nature. Build those relationships. We're a family here at Roehl. It's so important that we have those relationships.
Yes. And off of that messaging, something that we've talked about quite a bit here on the podcast is the mental health and the morale in trucking. So, especially as you're building out those relationships, how do you feel like we could start to do a little bit better of a job with keeping an eye on the mental health and the morale of those drivers, especially post 2020 and post the pandemic and everything that brought with it?
Very, very important having those conversations and then having resources for our teammates when we can tell they need something. COVID wasn't easy. Our drivers were, they were isolated. They were in their trucks. A lot of businesses were closed off, not a lot that they could do. And it was so important that we talked to them. But one thing that we've done at Roehl, over these last few years, we built a health and wellness program for all of our teammates. And part of that, it's about the physical, taking care of yourself, eating right, exercising, etc. And there's a lot of resources there, smoking cessation. But the mental part is huge because the mental health can take a toll and affect your physical health if you don't address it. So we've spent a lot of time and money providing resources for our teammates there. We have an employee assistance line where they can call. It can be completely anonymous, or they can share their name and we'll get them in touch with the right people, that therapists, etc., to help them work through their issues. Maybe it's financial. They've got a lot of pressure on them from a financial standpoint, especially now, during this freight recession. Everyone's struggled. And providing those folks the right resources. When there's someone there to help you, you don't feel so alone. And that's really key. And it's why we did it. And it's been a great benefit. And I know we're going to keep it around simply because we've seen how that's helped all of our teammates, not just our drivers, but our non-driver teammates as well.
Absolutely. Well, Tim, I want to say thank you again for taking the time to come on the show today. You've provided a lot of really valuable insight into what's going on in the market and also kind of the shifts that we should be making as far as what we're doing moving forward, especially with this newer generation of truck drivers that are coming in and the fact that we're sitting at a pivotal standpoint in order to move that culture on down the road. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I really appreciate it. And I cannot wait to get this episode out to all of our listeners so that they can hear more about your brilliance and the mindset that you're bringing into the industry.
Well, thank you, Chelsea. Thanks for inviting me on today. And I really enjoyed our conversation.
Yes, absolutely. And Tim, for any of our viewers out there who are wanting to really reach in and communicate with you more outside of just this episode, where is it they can best find you?
Super easy. You can reach me or anyone at roehl.jobs. Instead of .com, it's .jobs. And we spell it two ways just to make it easy. ROEHL, or we also have RAIL. So if you misspell it, you'll still get to us. Otherwise, you can give me a call, 715-591-7050.
Perfect. Well, thanks again so much, Tim. And hopefully we'll be chatting again here soon.
Thank you very much.
Alrighty, guys, that's a wrap for this episode of Drive. Tim, again, I cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing your insight, your introspect, and really your compassion and passion for the industry. It really does take a special type of company who's willing to invest in their drivers day in and day out in order to make sure that we move this culture on down the road to something that's more valuable, something that's more realistic, and something that's more real for all of the drivers behind the seat. Also, thank you so much for taking the time to spotlight your drivers with their 6 million and their 5 million mark achievements. That is huge. And I love the flip that you're bringing in, that we've got to stop sensationalizing all of these negative stories with drivers, because really that is what the media wants to pick up. And if we can stop supporting that, we can start pushing those more positive narratives, we're going to get a lot further with making the industry shine the way that it should. If this episode has spoke to you, please make sure that you hit follow, send it to a friend, or come hang out with us on LinkedIn. And let's keep these positive stories flowing. Handled Now is here for the long haul, and that really starts with the way that we treat our people and the conversations that we're having, even when those conversations get tough. So stick around and listen in for the next episode to see what kind of tough conversations we're having next and how we're addressing what's going on in the industry. See you guys soon. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Drive. For more from Handled Now, head to handlednow.com and sign up for our newsletter. You can also join us on our Facebook group called The Driver's Seat and follow us on LinkedIn. Don't forget to subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcasts.